Ever looked at a big genetics question on an exam and just froze? Well, today we're going to fix that. We are taking a real, high-level GCSE genetics question from an AQA paper, and we're going to crack it wide open. I'll walk you through it step by step, showing you exactly how to lock in every single mark. Let's do this. So at the heart of this whole thing is this pedigree chart. Now, I know it might look a little intimidating, but honestly, just think of it like a family mystery. It's a puzzle that shows how a genetic disorder, in this case polydactyly, has been passed down. Our job is to be the detectives and decode the clues hidden in these little shapes and lines. Here's our game plan. We'll start by sizing up the whole challenge. Then we're going to break it down piece by piece. First, we'll nail down a key definition to get our foundation right. Then we'll decode that pedigree chart, build a Punnett square to predict what happens next, and finally, we'll tackle a tricky probability calculation. By the end, you'll have a complete genetics toolkit.
Right then, let's meet our opponent. This is question 6 from the AQA paper. What makes this such a great one to break down is that it actually tests two different inherited disorders side by side. You've got polydactyly, which is caused by a dominant allele, and cystic fibrosis, which is recessive. It's a beast of a question, but it's designed to test the full range of your genetic skills. First up, a one-mark question, and this one is all about precision. The examiners are looking for a very specific scientific definition. Getting this right is a great way to start and build some confidence for the rest of the question. So the question is simple enough. What is a dominant allele? Now, before I show you the answers, just take a second. How would you phrase it? What are those key words an examiner would be scanning for to give you that mark? And here they are. These are the 4 perfect answers pulled directly from the official AQA mark scheme. You only need to give one of them to get the point. See the pattern? They're all about the allele being expressed, about it showing its effect. So whether you say it's always expressed in the heterozygote, or when only one copy is present, you're showing you get exactly what dominance means. Okay, let's move on and see how this all builds. Now we have to apply that knowledge to our family tree. This is all about using the evidence in front of you to draw a logical conclusion. Right. So the question wants us to prove that person 1, that male up in the top left, is heterozygous, which just means he has the genotype DD. The answer isn't a guess, it's right there in the chart. You just have to know how to read the clues. Okay, this is a classic 2-mark question, and that's a big hint that you need to make 2 connected points. Here's the logic. First, the obvious part. Person 1 has polydactyly, so he has to have at least one dominant D allele. But what about his second allele? Well, the key is to look at his kids. Person 5, his child, does not have the disorder. That tells us their genotype has to be DD. Now, think about it. Where did those 2 Ds come from? One from each parent. So person 1 must have gotten a recessive D from person 1. And there's your proof. Person 1 has a big D because he's affected, but he passed on a little d to his child. He has to be DD. Boom! Okay, next up, a classic genetics problem that calls for one of the most useful tools in your biology arsenal, the Punnett square. This part is all about predicting probabilities. So here's the scenario. Person 6 and 7 want to know the chances of their next child having polydactyly. We're told the answer is 0.5 or 50%. But look, this is a 4-mark question. That's a huge clue that you can't just write down the answer. You have to show every single step of your thinking to get full credit. Let's break down how to do that perfectly. First things first, we need to be 100% sure about the parents' genotypes. Let's look at the chart. Person 7 is unaffected, so his genotype is easy. It's got to be 2 recessive alleles, small d. Person 6 is a little trickier. We know she has polydactyly, so she has at least one big D. But look at her mother, person 2. She's unaffected, so her genotype is small d. That means she could only pass a D allele to her daughter. So person 6 must have gotten a D from her mom, which makes her heterozygous, D. Now that we have the parent genotypes, DD and DD, we can build our Punnett square. Remember, this is just a simple grid that shows all the possible ways the parents' alleles can combine. We'll put person 6's possible gametes, a dominant D and a recessive D, down the side. Then we'll put person 7's possible gametes along the top. He can only produce gametes with a recessive D, right? Now we just fill in the grid and we've mapped out all 4 possible outcomes for their child. And just like that, the Punnett square makes the answer crystal clear. You can see that 2 of the 4 boxes end up with the genotype DD. Since D is dominant, any kid with this genotype will have polydactyly. The other 2 boxes are DD, for an unaffected child. So that's 2 chances out of 4 of having the disorder.
which gives us our probability of 0.5, or 50%. That's how you secure all 4 marks. Simple as that.
All right, on to the final part of the question. This is where it switches gears from polydactyly to cystic fibrosis, and it involves a probability calculation that can really trip people up if they don't break it down logically.
So this part gives us 2 key statistics. We're told that 1 in 50 people are carriers for cystic fibrosis, but only 1 in 2,500 people actually have the condition. Our job is to use our genetics knowledge to explain the mathematical link between those 2 numbers. Why the big difference? Here is the 4-mark logic straight from the mark scheme. Each of these points gets you a mark. First, you have to state the fundamental genetic fact. The cystic fibrosis allele is recessive. That's point 1. Second, you have to explain what that means. To get the disorder, you need to inherit 2 copies, 1 from each parent. Point 2. Third, you state the probability of getting one of those copies, which the question gives you, 1 in 50. And finally, you do the math. The chance of inheriting 1 from your mother is 150, and the chance of inheriting 1 from your father is 150. To find the probability of both things happening, you multiply them. So 1 over 50 times 1 over 50 gives you 1 over 2,500. Nail those 4 points, and you've nailed the question.
And there we have it. We have cracked every single part of question 6. So let's just step back for a second and organize everything we've learned into a toolkit that you can use for pretty much any genetics problem they throw at you.
So here it is, your genetics problem-solving toolkit. Number 1, use precise definitions. Know them cold to lock in those easy marks. Number 2, analyze the evidence. Learn to read a pedigree chart like a detective, using the kids to figure out the parents. Number 3, predict outcomes. Master the Punnett square. It is your best friend for calculating probability. And number 4, do the math. Understand how to combine probabilities to explain patterns in a whole population. This toolkit is your key to tackling any genetics question with confidence.
And that brings us to the end of our breakdown. We haven't just answered one tough question here. We've built a method, a system, for solving tons of others just like it. So my final question is for you. Now that you have this toolkit, what other genetic puzzles could you solve? Think about things like eye color or other inherited conditions. The fundamental rules of dominance, recessiveness, and probability, they're always going to apply.